So I want you to just picture this. You are standing on the plush, unimaginably expensive and now heavily blood-soaked carpet of this luxury riverboat casino.
Right.
Beneath your feet, you can feel the deep, rhythmic vibration of a massive steam engine. The air smells like expensive perfume, ozone, and copper from all the blood.
A lovely combination.
Yeah, exactly. And standing right in front of you, wiping a fresh streak of crimson off her dagger with a branded casino cocktail napkin, is the wholesome, cheerful halfling waitress who literally just served you a pineapple drink. Welcome to the deep dive.
It is, it is the absolute definition of a situation that has violently, catastrophically jumped the tracks.
Seriously.
We're looking at the immediate aftermath of a brutal raid on the Keonthar princess. This is by the followers of Paul, the Lord of Murder.
Yeah.
But I want to make something very clear right out of the gate here.
Go for it.
The physical carnage on the deck of this ship is really just a backdrop.
Because today we are deconstructing the incredibly chaotic events of Session 20, which is titled Forever Kept Getting Longer. And if you think we're just going to do like a play-by-play of some spells and sword swings, think again.
Yeah, no, that's not what this is.
Right. This is a psychological autopsy of a party that is, at its absolute core, fundamentally fracturing.
The stakes here are entirely internal, which honestly makes them far more dangerous than any cultist.
Mm-hmm.
We have a core party reeling from a literal physical trip to hell.
Literally Avernus.
Right, specifically Avernus, the first layer of the Nine Hells. They are dragging around severe, untreated PTSD, which was laid completely bare in their private diaries from Section 19.5, Inside the Minds of the Cast 2.
Which was a heavy read.
Oh, incredibly heavy. And right into the middle of this volatile, traumatized Group Step 2 brand new members, Melages and Talia.
And these two, they don't just join the team, they instantly upend the entire moral and tactical dynamic of the group. It's like throwing a wrench and, a glitter bomb into a jet engine at the exact same time.
That is a very apt description. Our mission today is to understand how these shifting moral compasses, these radically conflicting ideologies and unhealed traumas dictate the explosive events aboard the ship.
Because we need to look at what happens when the people you trust to watch your back start operating on completely different ethical frequencies.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start right on that casino deck. The fight is over. The party is gathered around a single surviving female cultist of Baal.
She is bound, helpless, bleeding.
Right. And standing off to the side, watching from the gambling tables with this just like smug, predatory amusement, are Valessa's drow sisters, Ilmrin and Talus.
Which immediately injects a highly toxic family dynamic into an already high-stress interrogation. The sisters are a direct breathing link to Valessa's past in the Underdark.
And for anyone who isn't totally steeped in the lore, the Underdark isn't just, a physical cave system.
No, it's a societal panopticon.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're talking about Mezzobaranzan, right? A drow city defined by the worship of the spider goddess Lolth.
Which is brutal.
It is a culture built entirely on a constant paranoid struggle for survival. You don't just live in Mezzobaranzan. You survive it by climbing over the corpses of your rivals.
And Ilmrin, who clearly thrives in that environment, just can't help herself. She starts poking the bear.
Of course she does.
She teases Valessa about her past interrogation skills, just casually bringing up Valessa's old violent life in front of her new surface world friends.
But Valessa pushes back sharply.
Yeah, she clarifies very specifically and very coldly that she was skilled at torture, not interrogation.
Right.
And she makes this chilling distinction. She says, torture doesn't get you the correct answer, it just gets you an answer.
It's a really fascinating moment of self-awareness.
Yeah.
She's openly acknowledging the brutality of her past, but she is actively rejecting its utility.
Yeah.
She's essentially telling her sister, I know how to cause pain, but I also know that pain is an incredibly inefficient, primitive tool for finding the truth.
It's like a surgeon correcting someone that they don't heal people, they just know how to cleanly cut meat. It's a terrifying semantic defense.
Yeah, it really is.
I have to ask, what does this specific distinction actually say about Valessa's current state of mind? Because it feels like she's hanging on by a thread here.
I'd take it a step further than hanging by a thread, honestly. She is engaged in a profound internal war with her own physical identity.
Right, because of what happened at Tsar Palace.
Exactly. Think about what she literally just went through with Lady Violet. Valessa underwent an infernal ritual involving the archdevil Mephistopheles to absorb a fiendish parasite, a hell wasp, into her bloodstream.
Which is just wild to think about.
Right, and the mechanics of this ritual turned her into a Dhampir, a creature caught between life and undeath. But the physical toll was horrific.
Yeah, her mechanical drow prosthetics, the ones she built herself, literally popped off.
They popped off as organic flesh and blood limbs grotesquely regrew to replace them.
The visceral body horror of that is insane. You have metal giving way to rapid cell growth. But the kicker, the really devastating part, is that her eyes turn red again.
The exact color they were when she was a slave to Loth. She fought for over 100 years to build a new life, a new identity on the surface with her amethyst eyes.
That was her physical proof that she had changed.
Yeah, and in one ritual, that visual marker of her trauma, the red eyes of a Loth-sworn drow, was forced right back onto her face.
So, I mean, imagine you're Valessa. You look in the mirror and you see the monster you used to be staring back at you. Then your sister shows up and essentially says, hey, remember when you used to be a monster?
No wonder she's defensive. She is desperate to prove she's not that person anymore.
Totally.
And look at how she attempts to prove it mechanically. She leans in over this bound cultist and weaves a magical compulsion into her words, a zone of truth or, a similar enchantment.
Commanding the Baelish to speak only the truth.
Right. She replaces the physical cruelty of the Underdark with magical domination.
See, you say she replaces it, but I look at that and think, is it really that different? Yes, it's cleaner. There's no blood, no screaming.
Sure.
But you're still stripping away a human being's fundamental autonomy. You're hacking their brain instead of their nervous system.
And that is exactly the paradox she's trapped in. It's a more acceptable method for a surface dweller, but fundamentally it is still an act of intense, forceful control.
Right.
She isn't flaying the woman, but she is still reaching into her mind and pulling the levers. It shows that Valessa is trying to take baby steps away from her past, but she is still relying on the foundational principles she learned in the Underdark, which is dominance.
Well, the magical dominance works perfectly. The cultist spills everything. And what she reveals strips away any mystery. The raid wasn't some complex, arcane ritual.
No, it was a smash and grab.
Yeah, these people just wanted to break into the cargo hold, steal a massive shipment of Lantinese firearms, and slaughter every innocent passenger they could find along the way. Classic textbook Baelish stuff.
The cultists themselves weren't even sophisticated threats. They were basically thugs, using paralysis magic to hold people still long enough to slit their throats. But the real danger, the real threat, is their leader, a woman named Morel.
Who total bailed on them. She just dropped a portal and vanished right off the deck, leaving her devoted followers to be captured or killed.
A masterclass in cult leadership right there.
Truly.
Ugh.
But the captive does confirm that their base of operations is buried deep in the Undercellar.
And for those unfamiliar, the Undercellar is a massive subterranean maze. It's a sprawling black market, accessible through the district called the Wide, sitting about 75 feet beneath the cobblestone streets of Baldur's Gate.
So, to summarize the tactical situation here, the party has the intel. They know the objective was guns. They know the enemy's base is beneath the city, and they know the leader is still in the wind. But knowing the truth is one thing. Deciding what to do with a fanatic of the murder god who is bleeding on your carpet, that is where this new party dynamic violently clashes. Because now we have a prisoner of war situation on a luxury casino boat.
And the debate over the cultists' fate is incredibly swift, and it is vicious. You have multiple conflicting philosophies colliding all at once over this single-bound woman.
Right, so let's set the stage for this debate. You've got Marceline, the tall elven floor manager of the casino, who is basically acting as the voice of institutional law.
Yeah, she wants to hand the cultists over to the Flaming Fist. Just let the local cops handle it. Simple, clean, bureaucratic.
Then you have Vakfriur, the towering Tabaxi barbarian who absolutely demands she be put in a prison cell.
Vakfriur is vehemently advocating for due process, for imprisonment over mindless killing. She wants a systemic solution that avoids further bloodshed.
And then, stepping into this tense legal and ethical debate is Mawes. And I need to set the scene for you guys here. Mawes is a halfling cleric of Yondala.
The goddess of protection.
Yes, protection of the hearth of family. She's the deity you pray to for a safe home and a warm meal. Mawes has spent the entire evening undercover as a cheerful waitress, serving pineapple drinks, explaining to confused rich people that whiskey on the rocks doesn't involve literal gravel.
She seems entirely wholesome.
She projects an aura of absolute domestic safety. And yet she stands there, listens to Marceline and Wagner argue, casually points out that the Flaming Fist has an incredibly poor track record of keeping dangerous people locked up, and
She
then
just throws a knife and kills the bound cultist on the spot,
right through the heart.
without a single microsecond of hesitation.
A cold-blooded execution by a cleric of the family goddess. Marceline, the casino manager, just groans about the mess on the furniture. Wagner is absolutely horrified, completely reeling.
And Callus, Valesa's edgy drow sister, just watches from across the room and declares that she likes Mossways very much.
Which, if a drow from Minzo burns and likes your vibe, you might want to reevaluate your life choices. I have to ask you why. Why does the wholesome halfling waitress suddenly turn into the Punisher?
To understand Malwise's actions, we have to look past the apron and the pineapple drinks and look closely at her background. Her psychology is rooted in deep, unhealed grief and a highly specific, very rigid worldview.
Right, because Malwise isn't just a cleric who read a holy book.
No, she is a widowed mother of 2 children, Rifer, who is 12, and Arver Jr., who is 18.
Her husband was murdered by a cult, wasn't he?
Yes. Her husband, Arver, was killed in their hometown of Gullikin by the Cult of the Absolute while he was trying to buy herbs for a local epidemic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Malwise left her children in the care of her sister and took up the dagger to, in her words, restore her faith. Now, let's look at her mechanical character flaws and bonds because they are crucial here.
Okay.
Her stated flaw is that she is quick to trust other halflings, but quick to distrust all others. And her bond is that she will not allow herself to return to her children until her mission is complete.
Okay, I'm going to push back on the popular reading of this. A lot of people might look at that and say, oh, she's driven by this intense, protective maternal instinct.
Sure.
But I'm not buying it. Slitting a tied-up woman's throat is a hitman move, not a PTA mom move. I think she's a zealot using her dead husband as an excuse to commit murder. Am I totally off base here?
You're touching on a really uncomfortable truth about her character, but I wouldn't call her a zealot in the traditional sense. I would call her a ruthless pragmatist.
A pragmatist, okay.
Yeah, her domain as a cleric is protection. But trauma has warped her definition of what protection looks like. When she looks at a Batalist cultist, she doesn't see a human being, a prisoner of war deserving of rehabilitation, or a citizen entitled to a fair trial.
She sees a rabid dog.
She sees a direct existential threat to her metaphorical children, which in this context is her adventuring party.
Because in her mind, if the Flaming Fist lets this cultist go, which they probably will because they are notoriously corrupt and incompetent, the cultist just comes back and tries to murder them again.
Exactly. To Malwise, leaving a threat alive when you have the power to permanently eliminate it is a fundamental failure to protect.
Wow.
We actually saw a glimpse of this ruthless efficiency earlier in the fight. When things got hot, she shed her waitress disguise, teleported behind Morel, and summoned spirit guardians.
Oh, right. But they weren't angels.
No, her guardians manifested as a swarm of spectral, nasty-looking halflings at ankle level, furiously jabbing knives into the enemy's shins and Achilles tendons. Malwise's brand of protection is violently preemptive.
Right. She's playing 4D chess with people's lives. But Wagner cannot accept this. She's furious. She gets right in Malwise's face, towering over her, and demands to know who made her, quote, judge, jury, and executioner.
It's a huge clash.
Imagine you're watching this play out. You have this massive, physically intimidating Tabaxi who literally rips doors off hinges with her bare hands, passionately advocating for nonviolence, and standing in front of her is this tiny halfling cleric calmly wiping blood off her knife. The juxtaposition is wild.
It's a brilliant visual, but it also forces us to examine Wagner's mental state. Why is the barbarian, a class literally defined by rage and combat, the one pleading for the life of a murderer?
Right.
For that, we must delve into Wagner's private diary entry from session 19.5, which is easily one of the most harrowing things I've read in this campaign.
The Avernus trauma. We have to talk about hell.
We do. Wagner is currently carrying a level of psychological weight that is almost incomprehensible. During their recent trip to the Nine Hells, she made a catastrophic, well-intentioned mistake.
With the imp.
Yes. The party had a caged imp named Cicerox. Vagfravir, believing she was doing the right thing, trying to be clever and merciful, attempted to bypass an infernal contract by sneaking Sisyrax out to a balcony to hand her over to an Arcanoloth named Melzura.
Hold on. For you listening who maybe doesn't have a monster manual memorized, what is an Arcanoloth and why is this a terrible idea?
An Arcanoloth is a fiend, a Yugoloth. They are essentially the treacherous, jackal-headed information brokers and contract lawyers of the lower planes.
Sounds bad.
They are native to Gehenna but operate everywhere. They are manipulative, immensely powerful magic users who view every interaction as a transaction. Handing over leverage to an Arcanoloth is basically handing your wallet and your social security number to a demon loan shark.
Which blew up in her face spectacularly. Halzura took the imp, the calling card the party needed turned to ash, and their employer, Corilla, was absolutely furious.
Furious enough to cast a banishment spell on Vagfravir, sending her directly to the soul coin mints in Dis.
This is the second layer of hell, right?
Correct.
I remember reading the description of this in the source material, and it is visceral. I want you to picture this. Vagfravir wasn't just sent to a timeout box, she was sent to a towering, sweltering, iron-wrought forge chamber.
A nightmare.
The heat is so intense it blisters the lungs. There is an infinite line of shackled, soot-blackened, emaciated souls trudging forward. At the front of the line, a spiked devil grabs these souls and slams them onto an iron pedestal. And then a massive hammer, a mechanical monstrosity, the diameter of the room itself, slams down. It mints human souls into physical currency amid thousands of simultaneous screams. And Vagfravir felt the ground shake with every single strike.
She was compelled to trudge forward in that line. The magic forced her. She felt the absolute, inescapable weight of eternal, industrialized torment.
Just horrifying.
This wasn't a battlefield. It was a factory of suffering. And that experience completely shattered her worldview. Before Avernus, she was the caretaker. She was the one making lovingly prepared meals for the group, even if they tasted like sulfur because they were in hell.
Right.
But after the Forge, her diary explicitly states she has spent the last several 10 days desperately struggling to convince herself she has truly changed.
So all this compassion, this sudden pacifism on the casino boat, it's overcompensation.
Absolutely. She is trying to define herself entirely by compassion because she is terrified of the alternative. She throws herself into cooking, into protecting her adopted family, into respecting the dead, into advocating for due process.
She wants to prove to the universe and to herself that she's becoming someone worthy of a second chance.
Because deep down, she secretly believes she doesn't deserve one. She believes she dumped Sisyrax and she almost got minted herself.
Wow. Okay, so put yourself in her shoes in this exact moment on the ship. You are desperately trying to be a good person to prove that the universe isn't just a meat grinder. You are advocating for law and order.
Yeah.
And then the kindly waitress standing next to you just murders a helpless woman right in front of you.
It is the ultimate violation of the safe space Vagfravir is trying to build. Moss's knife throw shatters the fragile, non-lethal moral high ground Vagfravir has staked her sanity on.
Completely shatters it.
It is a violent intrusion of the world's harsh reality into Vagfravir's delicate attempt at moral purity. It proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the party is still steeped in blood and violence, no matter how many warm meals Vagfravir cooks for them.
The internal friction is just palpable. You can practically hear the gears grinding. Vagfravir is horrified, her entire moral framework collapsing. Mogwais is completely unbothered, acting like she just took out the trash. Valessa's sisters are laughing at the chaos.
It's a mess.
But then there is Talia. While everyone is screaming at each other over the ethics of summary execution and the nature of justice, Talia, the other brand new party member, just casually walks up to the corpse and casts Gentle Repose.
A low-level necromancy spell that preserves a body from decay and prevents it from rising as undead.
Right.
It's a very practical, almost clinical action in the midst of a heated ethical debate.
But it's so incredibly detached, the timing is absurd, people are having an existential crisis, and she's basically putting the body in magical Tupperware.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
I have to know, is Talia just completely oblivious to the social and moral chaos around her? Or is this some kind of bizarre, highly advanced survival mechanism?
To understand Talia's mindset, we have to throw out human psychology entirely and look at her origins. She is a satyr from the Feywild.
Okay, the Feywild.
And the Feywild is an echo of the material plane, but it is dialed up to 11. Colors are brighter, emotions are wilder, time flows differently, and narrative logic often supersedes physical logic.
Right, it runs on fairy tale logic.
Exactly. Her diary entry from 19.5 is incredibly illuminating. She views herself entirely as a tourist in the prime material plane.
A tourist! That is wild. People are getting murdered, cults are attacking, the fate of the city is at stake, and she's treating it like a walking tour of Rome.
Literally. Her diary notes that she went to visit the Temple of Kelemfor, the god of the dead, a deeply solemn and serious place, just to, quote, see what all the fuss was about.
Unbelievable.
She bought a ticket to the Kyanthar Princess Casino, not to gamble or rub elbows with elites, but because it sounded like a fun afternoon. During the horrific ballast attack, while people were getting their throats cut, her internal monologue reveals that she stood on the casino floor, confused as to what the heck was going on.
She just cast hold person on two cultists, freezing them in place, and then basically went back to being a sightseer.
I really like the metaphor from your earlier notes about this, the video game analogy.
Oh, right, sandbox mode.
Yeah. Talia is playing an open-world video game on sandbox mode. The NPCs don't have permanent consequences, the rules are flexible, and she's just exploring the map,
Meanwhile, the rest of the party is playing on hardcore permadeath.
where every decision carries the weight of eternal damnation or societal collapse. Talia's ideals are rooted in finding beauty in all its forms and possessing a boundless curiosity.
But she doesn't really understand consequences, right?
No, her mechanical flaw is that she is incredibly naive when it comes to social constructs. And she is prone to risk-taking because she grew up in an environment where death is often just a temporary inconvenience or a punchline to a cosmic joke.
That makes so much sense, especially when you look at how she dealt with Silas. The source notes mention this encounter with a vampire spawn named Silas.
Oh yes, the miserable vampire spawn.
Yeah, the guy hated being undead. His god despised the undead, and he was absolutely miserable sitting in a cave wallowing in self-pity. But Talia didn't see a tragic monster to be slain or a soul to be saved. She just encouraged him to keep adventuring.
She just thought he was neat.
Exactly. And her proposed solution to his uncontrollable blood cravings just let him occasionally drain members of the local militia near Flan and blame it on monstrous humanoids.
Precisely. To Talia, the heavy moral weight of murder, undeath, or corruption is completely foreign.
Oh.
Just an interesting experience, a quirk of local biology.
It's all just fascinating to her.
We see this play out perfectly later in session 20 when the party actually gets some downtime in the city. Where does the traumatized party go to decompress? Where does Talia go?
The museum.
She goes to the museum at Remizith's Tower in the Temple District.
Oh, this is hands down my favorite part of the session. She goes to a museum, and because satyrs are incredibly rare in Baldur's Gate, a gaggle of these wide-eyed young scribes and scholars who have never seen one before just start following her around.
They're mesmerized.
They're sketching her hooves, taking frantic notes on her biology, asking deeply intrusive questions about her diet and sleeping habits. And instead of getting annoyed, she just cheerfully strikes poses for them like a supermodel and answers all their questions.
It is delightful, but it also serves a crucial narrative function. Talia represents a vital release valve for the party's immense psychological tension.
They definitely need one.
Think about the pressure cooker this group is in. Valesta is haunted by the trauma of the Underdark and the literal physical manifestation of her past. Vegfrir is traumatized by the soul-crushing machinery of hell.
Right.
Cianthla is dealing with the cutthroat, murderous politics of the city's elite. Mao is steeped in the fresh, raw grief of a murdered husband.
They are all carrying literal heavy baggage onto this boat.
But Talia is completely unburdened by the past. She is an outsider who genuinely feels a connection to outgroups like Vampire Spawn or Captive Cultists, but she completely lacks the cultural framework to feel guilt or trauma in the way the others do.
It's like she's Teflon.
In a party that is suffocating under the weight of their own histories and moral failings, Talia acts as a bizarrely wholesome, consequence-free anchor. When she casts gentle repose on that corpse, she isn't doing it out of a deep respect for the dead or a complex theological belief.
She's just doing it because preserving things is a practical, interesting thing to do with magic.
Exactly.
She is the only person on this ship who isn't bringing a ghost along for the ride. But, Talia blissfully ignoring the consequences actually forces us to look at the other major plotline here, which is entirely about global consequences.
Yes.
Because the bloodshed on the casino deck wasn't the only threat. The ballists weren't just there to cause chaos, they were after a very specific prize. And that forces the party to leave the casino floor and head down into the dark, oily cargo hold.
And this is where we pivot from theology and murder into the incredibly dangerous realm of high-stakes geopolitics.
The lens pulls way back here. The focus shifts from the localized violence of Paul to the broader, systemic machinations of the Sword Coast.
The party follows Becca Bitesize down into the belly of the ship. Becca is the brilliant, somewhat irreverent goblin artificer who actually arranged this voyage for the party.
And Becca pulls back the tarp and reveals the true prize. It isn't just the ship's massive steam engine, although that's impressive enough. It's crates upon crates of advanced Lantanese firearms.
These are not simple, crude weapons. For context, Lantan is a secretive island nation far to the south, renowned for its highly advanced technology and artificers.
They worship Gon, the god of invention, right?
Yes. The sources describe these weapons as advanced tech, utilizing smoke powder and precision machine tubes to repel small metal projectiles at lethal velocities.
We are talking about muskets, pistols, maybe even rudimentary explosives.
In a world of swords and skullbooks, these represent a massive, terrifying leap in industrialized warfare.
And they are just sitting in the hold of a floating casino. I mean, why? Why disguise an arms shipment as a luxury cruise?
Because this isn't just cargo. This is a massive, highly illegal diplomatic bribe.
Politics.
Always. Lantan is aggressively trying to open a trade embassy in Baldur's Gate to establish a foothold on the Sword Coast. The Chianthar Princess itself, the steam technology, and these hundreds of firearms, it's all a gift.
And the recipient.
Duke Liara Porter of the Baldur's Gate City Watch, a council member responsible for external threats. She placed the original order in secret.
Okay, let's just pause and appreciate the absurdity of this situation. The party is suddenly caught in the crossfire of international relations.
Very messy ones.
You have an island nation bribing a corrupt politician with weapons of mass destruction, smuggled on a luxury boat filled with wealthy nobles, which is then attacked by a death cult trying to steal the weapons to commit terrorism. It's a logistical nightmare.
It perfectly highlights a recurring, inescapable theme for this group. They cannot escape the political machinery of the world.
They really can't.
No matter how focused they are on their personal quests, they're constantly being used as pawns, patsies, or problem solvers by vastly more powerful entities. We saw this earlier when Seracia Imravel, a Taiyan merchant, hired them to stop rival wizards in the sewers.
Right, and when the Devil Mizra drafted them to investigate the noble Durnbold family.
And now, here is Becca Bitesize, offering them gold and free passage to Waterdeep simply because they accidentally protected a major geopolitical asset.
Which brings us to Siantal. We've talked about Talia as the naive tourist and Molwise as the ruthless pragmatist. But Siantal's absolute emotional detachment in this cargo hold forces us to examine the ultimate political cynic of the group.
Yes.
Looking at their 19.5 diary entry, Siantal is slipping into a very dark, very isolated headspace.
Siantal's mental state is deeply concerning, perhaps the most concerning of the group because it is so quiet. They are a warlock bound to a celestial patron, specifically, a sentient, living planet from the positive energy plane.
You would think that connection to pure celestial energy would make them hopeful or, I don't know, radiant.
But their day-to-day reality is entirely mired in the toxic, mundane politics of the Baldur's Gate elite. In their diary, they spend a significant amount of time reflecting on a recent event known as the Patriarch Gathering.
Right, the Silver Shield Ball. The party was essentially acting as high-end bodyguards for the vampiric Lady Violet Tsar. Tell the listeners what a Patriarch Gathering actually entails, because it's not just a party.
The Patriarchs are the upper echelon of Baldur's Gate society. The old money, the nobles, the ones who actually run the city behind the scenes.
The movers and shakers.
Patriarch Gathering is where the real business is done. Siantal describes the ball in their diary as droll, a tedious night of petty slights and thinly veiled threats.
They basically spent the evening watching the city's most powerful, influential people engage in polite, institutionalized backstabbing out in the open.
It's an environment where everyone knows the battle lines are drawn, everyone knows who is corrupt, but no one does anything about it because the system protects them.
At least no one did anything about it until Malrazandru dropped her magical disguise and hurled a literal fireball into the crowd.
Instantly killing two patriarchs and leaving Duke Rakath a smoldering heap on the dance floor.
Yeah, that explosive event profoundly affected Siantal's worldview. While the rest of the party might have seen it as a horrific tragedy, Siantal's diary notes a strange sense of catharsis that Maelra, the instigator, has finally been dealt with.
They write this incredibly chilling line. Unchecked thorns can overgrow into severe infections, requiring the complete excision of surrounding tissue.
Complete excision. That is such cold clinical language. It sounds like a surgeon talking about a tumor.
It does.
And honestly, it sounds a lot like Merrilees' philosophy, just dressed up in academic terms, eliminate the threat permanently. I'm going to push back on the idea that Siantal is just being cynical here. I think they are actively bordering on sociopathy,
That's a strong word.
but they are excising their own humanity to cope with the stress.
I would argue it's a necessary triage mechanism. But you're not wrong about the excision of humanity. Look at how they handled the fallout of the ball.
Okay.
During the investigation, it was discovered that Lady Aelia Durenbold, a noblewoman, was actually Maelra in disguise all along, meaning the real Lady Durenbold's husband is likely dead as well.
Tragic.
But does Siantal seek comfort from the party? Do they express sorrow for the Durenbold family? No. They sit down at a desk and compose a cold, impeccably neutral legal letter to Kaith Durenbold in Waterdeep.
Formally directing them to the appropriate legal channels for inheritance, and they just send it via courier pigeon.
It's all business. Someone's family is destroyed, and Siantal is basically filing the paperwork. They are detaching themselves from the emotional horror of the situation and focusing strictly on the logistics.
Because logistics are controllable, emotions are not.
Exactly. The most telling line in Siantal's diary, the one that really shows how far they've withdrawn, is this. Expecting my current group of companions to be in any way tact or discreet is tantamount to madness.
Ouch. That is a brutal assessment of their friends.
It's harsh. But from Siantal's hyper-rational perspective, it's completely accurate. They're trying to navigate high-stakes political intrigue, celestial contracts, and citywide conspiracies.
Meanwhile, their party members are throwing knives at tied-up prisoners, shrinking giant barbarians mid-step, getting into shouting matches with celestial investigators, and acting like chaotic tourists.
Siantal is emotionally distancing themselves from the chaos of the party to focus purely on the mission and their own survival. They no longer view the party as friends or confidants. They view them as liabilities that must be managed.
And Siantal cutting people out of their life like tumors actually forces us to look at the exact opposite extreme on this boat. Valessa.
Yes, Valessa.
Because while Siantal is excising their relationships, Valessa is absolutely drowning in hers. And that is the perfect pivot to the most chaotic, hilarious, and ultimately heartbreaking moment of the episode, dealing with Valessa's drow sisters.
The presence of Ilmrin and Talis on the Kionthar Princess is a ticking time bomb. It was only a matter of time before it went off.
They are living, breathing representatives of everything Valessa fled, and their mere existence on the ship forces all the party's simmering internal tensions right to the surface.
Vakfrir, who we establish is already on edge and desperate to assert some kind of control, outright accuses the sisters of spying.
She storms up and demands to know why they are there, interrogating them.
And Ilmrin, who is a highly trained operative and apparently has zero fear of an angry giant tabaxi, just steps right into Vakfrir's personal space and asks who the fuck she thought she was.
So bold.
Ilmrin calmly points out that if they actually wanted to spy on them or kidnap Valessa, Vakfrir never would have seen them coming.
Which is entirely true given the lethal efficiency of drow operatives. But to understand the true agonizing weight of this encounter, we have to look inside Valessa's mind from session 19.5. We have to look at the silence between her words.
She is completely paralyzed by indecision, isn't she?
Completely. She doesn't know whether to hug them or stab them.
She writes in her diary that the entire experience of seeing her sisters in the flesh is painfully bittersweet in both extremes at the same time. She is adamant that she will never, ever return to the Underdark.
But she also knows the cruel math of Menzoberranzan. She knows that if her sisters return home empty-handed, having failed to retrieve their runaway daughter, their mother will punish them severely, potentially lethally.
So she's trapped. If she leaves with them, she loses her soul. If she stays, she condemns her sisters to torture.
Yeah, the trap is so tight that she even contemplates a horrific solution. In her diary, she considers using the suggestion spell, which is mind control magic, to artificially force her sisters to seriously consider the pros and cons of staying on the surface world.
She loves them so much and is so desperate to save them that she is willing to violate their free will and brainwash them just to keep them safe from their own mother.
That is incredibly dark. She's willing to become the monster to save them from the monster.
But before Valessa can enact any sort of magical manipulation, Mowise steps in.
Thank goodness.
And Mowise delivers what can only be described as a masterpiece of chaotic, high-stakes improvisation.
Yes. The oopsie plan, this is peak D&D right here.
It really is.
Mowise realizes the family tension between the Drow and the Tabaxi is going to explode into violence, so she decides to create a massive distraction so the rest of the party can slip away unnoticed. She casts Disguise Self to perfectly mimic Valessa's height, clothing, and physical appearance.
A spell aided by a blessing of the trickster that Mowise cast on herself to ensure she was stealthy enough to pull this off.
Right. So disguised perfectly as Valessa, Mowise walks out onto the busy casino floor, acting just suspicious and erratic enough to draw Ilmarin's attention away from the group.
And Ilmarin takes the bait immediately. She skips up behind Mowise, throws an arm over her shoulder in this faux affectionate way, pulls her close, and asks, very dangerously, why she left the Underdark without a word.
Now, remember who is under that disguise. Mawise is a halfling cleric from the peaceful, idyllic town of Gullikin. She has no idea how Drow actually interact.
None. Her entire knowledge of Menzoberranzan comes from reading a few exaggerated history books.
So her performance is absolutely hilariously unhinged. She doesn't try to play it cool. She launches into this loud, incredibly dramatic theatrical weeping.
Right in the casino.
She is sobbing on Ilmarin's shoulder in the middle of the room, loudly claiming that Ilmarin was always her favorite sister and that she misses the Underdark terribly because life on the surface is just so hard.
And why is it hard?
Because, according to Mowise, no one up here appreciates daily whippings or mushrooms.
It is a grotesque, cartoonish caricature of Drow culture, delivered with utter, desperate sincerity in a crowded room.
And Talus, the younger, edgier sister who takes herself very seriously, is just watching this from a gambling table across the room. She takes one look at this sobbing, melodramatic display from her supposed sister and just shouts a single word of absolute disgust. Pathetic.
The layered irony of this entire scene is brilliant. Because Talia, the Fey tourist, who was supposed to use this distraction to leave the area safely with the rest of the party, doesn't leave.
Of course not.
Instead, she turns herself invisible just so she can lurk nearby and watch the family drama unfold like a soap opera. The tourist strikes again.
But the performance isn't just a distraction, it's a heist. While Mélise is locked in this awkward hug, weeping loudly about man-slaves and mushrooms, she uses her rogue skills to pickpocket a fancy leather pouch right off Ilmarin's belt.
What's fascinating here isn't the theft itself, but what Mélise finds inside that pouch once she drops the disguise and ducks behind some crates.
This wasn't a targeted tactical strike. It was a crime of opportunity.
But the contents of that pouch fundamentally recontextualize the entire relationship between Valessa and her sisters.
She opens it up and finds these tiny metallic, marble-like objects with faint seams.
Mechanical construct accessories. When activated by a button, these marbles unfold and crawl over the wearer like tiny robotic spiders.
That's incredible.
They are incredibly complex, expensive, and difficult to assemble. It's a subtle, almost throwaway detail, but it tells us something massive. Ilmarin is a brilliant artificer in her own right.
She's not just a Lolth-sworn zealot or a simple assassin. She's an engineer.
Much like Valessa, who spent her downtime lovingly crafting adamantine half-plate armor for Vogmerfrir. The sisters share a deep passion for creation and mechanics.
But the constructs aren't the real prize. The real gut punch is what else is in the pouch. Mawmise finds a folded, unsealed letter, and she reads it. And you guys, this letter absolutely broke my heart.
It's devastating.
I want to read a bit of it for you because it is the emotional core of this entire deep dive. Ilmarin writes, I used to tell myself you left because you had no choice. That my favorite sister would never simply vanish and leave me behind to smile, kneel, lie, obey, and survive all the little cruelties of Drow society alone.
It's brutal.
She goes on, you were supposed to show me there was another way to live. Do you know what it felt like waiting for you? I watched every shadow. I listened for every footstep. I kept thinking she'll come back for me. And then forever kept getting longer.
And then forever kept getting longer. It is a devastating, poetic indictment of Valessa's escape.
She finishes the letter by saying, I still love you. That is the ugliest part. I hate you for leaving me, and I love you so much it makes me feel stupid. I needed my sister. I needed the one person who made freedom sound real.
This letter strips away all the smug amusement, the teasing, and the edgy posturing we've seen from Ilmrin on the casino floor.
Yeah, it reveals the terrifying, vulnerable reality of what Valessa left behind. Valessa isn't just a brave rogue who broke free from an evil empire. She is an older sister who abandoned a vulnerable younger sibling to a society defined by paranoia and survival of the fittest.
Ilmrin had to learn to smile, kneel, lie, obey, and survive all on her own.
A guilt Valessa must feel. I can't even fathom it.
And look at how Valessa actually reacts to this revelation. Marwise, realizing she just read something profoundly intimate, feels incredibly guilty, and immediately seeks Valessa out to confess and hand over the stolen pouch.
And here's the twist. Valessa reveals she was watching the whole time.
She was right there.
She rolled an incredibly high perception check, saw Mosswise steal the pouch off her sister's belt, and just stood there and watched it happen. She didn't shout a warning. She didn't stop her.
Because Valessa is functionally incapable of confronting her family directly without a layer of subterfuge. She desperately wants connection, she aches for it, but she is terrified of the vulnerability it requires.
She allows the theft to happen so she can receive her sister's true feelings through a third party.
And what does she do next? She takes the letter to read privately, identifies the mechanical constructs to confirm her sister's skills, and then quietly, stealthily returns the pouch to Ilmrin later that evening without ever saying a word about it.
It's an act of deep cowardice and deep love all bound up together. She wants to know her sister's heart, she wants that connection, but she refuses to look her in the eye and ask for it.
It perfectly encapsulates the tragedy of their dynamic. They are separated by trauma, by duty, by competing ideologies, and by a century of unspoken resentments. They are standing in the same room, but they are oceans apart.
Well, with the emotional baggage thoroughly unpacked, and wow, that was a lot, the ship is finally preparing to leave the docks.
Right. The engines are primed.
But before they can steam away into the sunset, bringing all this internal war out onto the open water, there are a few final, awkward, loose ends to tie up.
The real world intrudes once again, reminding them that they don't operate in a vacuum. This time, the intrusion takes the form of the press.
Yes. The party is trying to relax in the Velvet Lounge, catching their breath, and they're approached by Sylphie, a tiefling investigative reporter for the Baldur's Mouth newspaper.
She has a legitimate press pass authorized by the Parliament of Peers and wants to interview the, quote, heroes who bravely saved the ship from terrorists.
And given everything we've just analyzed about this party's current mental state, the interview goes exactly as well as you would expect.
It is a total PR disaster.
Talia, ever the helpful tourist, enthusiastically describes the dangerous Balist cult leader as a woman wearing a dragonborn skull for a hat, completely missing the gravity of the situation.
Mawes, recognizing a rare public relations opportunity to restore her faith's image, shamelessly self-promotes her status as a heroic cleric of Yondala.
But then she overplays her hand and subtly blames the City Watch for leaving the Lantany's firearms unattended long enough to attract the cultists in the first place.
Which is technically true, but maybe not something you say to a reporter.
Exactly. Siontal, meanwhile, just sits there, playing the humble card, telling the reporter they are just a cleric. Which is rich, coming from the cynical celestial warlock who is just plotting the excision of political rivals.
And Vag Freer, who is just utterly exhausted by all the lying and the posturing, gets fed up with the whole thing and aggressively walks away.
Which prompts Valessa, in a moment of chaotic mischief, to cheerfully tell the reporter that the giant, angry tabaxi who just stomped off is actually the best cook in Baldur's Gate and works at the Blade and Stars Inn.
Which immediately alarms Markwise, who rightfully points out that publicly printing the exact location where they live and work might not be the smartest tactical move right after they slaughtered an entire cell of Balist assassins.
Sylphie, the reporter, agrees to keep the specific details private, but then Valessa drops a casual bombshell that completely shifts the tone. As Sylphie walks away, Valessa turns to the group and mentions that she actually went on a date with that reporter once.
And Sylphie didn't recognize her at all.
Not a hint of recognition. They spoke face to face, and Sylphie had no idea who she was talking to.
This brings us back to the tragic irony of Valessa's Dhampir transformation. The ritual with Lady Violet didn't just change her eye color or give her a hunger for blood.
Right.
By organically regrowing her arm and leg, pushing off the distinct mechanical drow prosthetics that were her signature. The ritual fundamentally erased the physical identity she had painstakingly built on the surface.
To the outside world, to the people she used to know, she is no longer the recognizable, eccentric artificer with metal limbs. She is a total stranger. She erased her past, but she also erased her present.
The ultimate devastating price for a cure. But Valessa isn't the only one dealing with strained, unsettling physical changes.
No, the trauma of the past few weeks is beginning to manifest physically for Vague Fourier as well. Before they head to the lounge, Vague Fourier pulls Valessa aside for a quiet, deeply concerning conversation.
She complains of a strange transformation she has recently undergone, accompanied by severe, unexplained chest pains.
She asks Valessa to use her new magical acupuncture, a technique she learned from Becca Bitesize to channel healing magic, to look into it. What do we think is actually happening here?
What is fascinating here is the ambiguity of the symptom. There are three strong possibilities. Is this purely psychosomatic stress from the immense psychological trauma of the Avernus soul forges? The body keeping the score? Alternatively, is it a lingering, delayed curse from Nalzura the Arcanoloth, a punishment for the botched contract? Or thirdly, is it a side effect of the ambient high-level magic they are constantly exposed to?
Remember in session 17.5, Vague Fourier mentioned feeling a weird itch and sensing that something was leaning on her, expecting something from her?
Valessa diagnosed it then as minor toxicity in her meridians due to a metal element association, joking that she eats too many large fish. But these new severe chest pains suggest something much deeper.
Perhaps a fundamental change to her physiology.
They agree to keep it a secret from the rest of the party and seek answers in the grand libraries of Waterdeep.
So let's look at the board. We have a party full of secrets, untreated trauma, and deeply repressed emotions. The episode ends with this incredibly cinematic, almost peaceful image.
The hot tub scene.
The party has retreated to the hot tub in the ship's luxurious spa. They've got drinks in hand. Becca Bitesize is there, making sure everything is in order.
Seracia Imravel, the tie-in merchant who hired them way back in the sewers, has slipped into the tub too, casually explaining she's traveling to Waterdeep to coordinate with the new trade embassy.
And beneath them, the Lantany steam engine begins to hum with immense power. The Keonthar princess churns away from the docks of Baldur's Gate, heading north up the Sword Coast into the open ocean.
Quite the ending.
So we've dissected the trauma, the politics, the family drama. What does this all mean for the future of this campaign?
It means that while the party has successfully survived the immediate physical threat of the Bylist cultists, the true danger is traveling right along with them in those opulent cabins.
The internal ideological war has not been resolved. It has merely been confined to a smaller, inescapable space.
Moise's ruthless pragmatism is on a collision course with Vague Fourier's desperate need for compassion. Seontel's cynical detachment is diametrically opposed to Talia's naive tourism.
The heavy weight of Valessa's past is constantly threatening to crush the fragile reality of her present.
They're physically heading toward Waterdeep, but psychologically they are carrying all the blood of Baldur's Gate, the paranoia of Menzoberranzan, and the torment of Avernus right along with them.
It is a high-stakes pressure cooker on a riverboat. And that brings me to a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up. Think about the cargo hold of that ship.
The firearms.
Hundreds of crates of advanced Landanese firearms, weapons of mass, industrialized death, capable of fundamentally changing the face of warfare on the Sword Coast.
Right.
And upstairs on the casino deck, Moise, a cleric of the Goddess of Protection, just proved, without a shadow of a doubt, that she is willing to execute a helpless prisoner in cold blood to permanently eliminate a threat to her party.
It is a terrifying intersection of motive and means. The ultimate pragmatist sitting on top of the ultimate weapon.
Exactly. What happens when a fiercely protective, morally uncompromising pragmatist like Moise realizes the sheer, unbridled power contained in the ship's cargo hold? If she genuinely believes that a thrown knife can solve a complex problem, what could a halfling cleric do with a gun?
Definitely something to think about.
It's something to think about as the princess steams north into dark waters. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the motives behind the magic. Remember that the X-ray machine is always broken when it comes to the human mind. And we'll catch you next time.